Hello and welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Spincast. Joining us today, we have Corey Parks from New Haven, Connecticut. He is the director and head coach of the Esports program there at New Haven. Thank you, Corey, for joining us. I do appreciate you coming on board today. How you doing?
Pretty good. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invite. Doing good overall.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, kind of how we start off here at Stay Plugged In with these Spincasts is just tell us a little bit about you, Corey. Tell us specifically, how you got into esports in general through the past, and then what led you to the position there at New Haven.
Right. Yeah. So I kind of started off like a lot of other my colleagues and other people that compete in the spaces. I started with traditional sports, then made transition probably around 15 or 14 to esports. Dota on Warcraft 3, Engine being my first love, and then transitioned into Counter-Strike because I was so bad at it that I just couldn't ever be that bad at something, I guess. So we kept on playing. Went pro at 17, 18, traveling the nation, and then kind of just kept on going. Became a boomer in the scene around 24, so we swapped on over to coaching. Never really stopped playing. I constantly play now. It's just been in my life for the last 10 plus years, along with, significant amount of other people in that small little bubble of the pro scene. What really attracted me to the college scene was the fact that I didn't have these opportunities and resources around me when I was doing what I call the grind. And really want to bring that back to students who want to take the leap, the stepping stones to pro scene, to the academic scene, to whatever scene you want it to be, right? And just kind of giving back to the community that I think is so in a very strange state right now because of what it has been in the past and where we're trying to go. So that's kind of a little history about me.
Awesome. Now you hit on a lot of different stuff, so we got a lot to cover. Let's talk a little bit about from the player that's coming on board there at New Haven. Obviously, you were able to play pro. Mm-hmm. That's the equivalent of a collegiate player going in to play baseball, and his head coach was a Major League Baseball player.
Right.
That's not the normal landscape. Most players aren't able to go pro, but you also mentioned, you'd like to help them get access to, career paths and things like that. So if we could, let's focus on that side for just a moment.
Yeah.
What do you see for a student coming on board at New Haven, career path-wise? What do you see for them?
So, let's start before I say that we actually have two degrees right now for esports, right? We have a BS in esports and gaming, and also a focus on our business side for esports administration. So those are kind of designed in the idea that we're taking in the business side of esports, right? Like you have all these things that are video game design that have been around for a very long time. That's more, touching base with the casual aspect of gaming at times, but can be competitive as well. Where the business side is pretty much strictly esports a lot of the time. Where, obviously you can apply it to the casuals and developers and all of that, but the landscape is just for esports. And what I see when you get a degree in this, you start walking into the space, right now it's kind of everything. Esports is so fresh to everybody that you kind of get to pick where you want to go. And I refer to like being a pioneer, or people that are stepping into space as a pioneer, because you could end up talking to like HyperX and designing a mouse with them and ending up having a job there because you know the scene that well. Because there are so few people that know the scene in depth, because ultimately you don't have people that have been around that long playing in this scene. So anywhere from casters to developers to I'm a big fan of like basically making the streaming world bigger, right? Like Twitch has so many resources and they expand beyond just having a stream. And then anywhere from like management, from all these professional orgs that are popping up. You have a huge landscape of it could be someone in their basement that's paying like their org or their players through like their part-time job in high school because they want their buddies to do well in like a certain league, all the way up to like Liquid, Cloud9, Gen G, all those, right? So and these are expanding day to day because we see the viewership behind it. So when you say like where can you go with it and what's the outcome, it's pick and choose where you want to work at this point. If you have the background and you have the education behind it, they want you. We need people from every single aspect and every single vertical.
Yeah. So it's more a question of where can't you go as opposed to where can you go. That's awesome.
Exactly. Well, I always refer to the fact that gaming, right? When you're playing games, you're talking about generations of just people that like to play video games. And it's gotten to a point where people want to be better than the other person in the landscape of esports. But it's still very much gaming. We talked a little bit before we went live about the casual versus competitive aspect and how long that's been around for. You could breach it into anything, right? And you can connect those parallels anywhere. So, we have some really cool things that we're doing too around like the corruption and gambling side of esports, or the health and wellness of it, and these are just things that are in the very forefront of esports and gaming in general that people can just basically jump into and say, hey, was one of the first people to kind of like, research this, develop it. And it's at that point right now where you can leap in and just pick as long as you're, put the time in to get good at it.
No doubt. And an interesting caveat to that, and we won't get into too much more on it, but that's just in esports.
Right.
A number of these attributes are parallels to a variety of different industries. So you can take your knowledge of what you got out of this and actually go across the board to a variety of other industries as well, which is
100%.
a huge opportunity. Kind of going backwards again, some of the things you mentioned initially. So you went pro 16, 17?
Yeah, around there. My team, actually, I have 2 pictures of my team above my desk right now. We're a team called Check Six, and we traveled around playing a game called Counter-Strike Source. I mean, we did it for nothing more than maybe a $20K, $1,000 tournament and the bragging rights. But we would practice anywhere from 8 to 10 hours a day at times. So yeah, definitely, it's the
Not for
grind, as I
nothing, but
call it.
20K to a 16 or 17-year-old is not too bad.
It's not too bad, but when you start looking at the $1 million prize pools we see now,
Right.
it's like missed it by maybe 5 or 6 years. But I wouldn't be here and doing the thing I love if that wasn't the case, though. So
Understood. So I want to talk about that time frame in your life from a parental perspective. Or, how did they look at that initially? Go back to age 14, 15,
right.
per se.
Yeah.
And then how do they look at it today?
Initially, terribly, and for good reason too. I mean, I was addicted. I mean, you couldn't stop me from playing. I would, I always hear the infamous words of, "Can you pause that game?" And when you're playing in esports and competing and scrimming online, you don't just pause games. So
Right.
that being said, dinner's at 5:30. If I'm in the game at 5:15 and 5:30 rolls around, I can't stop. So the initial reaction from my parents was like, "Why are you spending so much time on these video games?" And to me, it was just, I did well in school, and it was my form of sports. Right? So like I said prior I used to play a lot of basketball, but then I realized that I'd have to wait on people to practice in esports, and I can dedicate my time to being better at this. So originally it was very skeptical about it, but when I started bringing a paycheck around, when I started winning a LAN, when I started all these things blossoming around me because of esports, when I was bringing out of it, they were very okay with it. I think that goes back to how you look at it, what you're taking away from it, and the time management behind it. You have to learn that earlier now than ever. And back then, I really applied myself to be able to say, what am I taking out of this with my team, my teamwork, all the leadership, all the intangibles we're taking out of it, right? But that's kind of like the conversations I'd have with my mother, at first was just, you don't need to have a LAN connection. You can be okay on wireless. You need to get down here and have dinner. All of these things from everybody. And then, 10 years later, holy cow, like this is your life and job. It's just, if I guess, but
Sounds oddly familiar to some of the conversations as I alluded to in my household. But to that point, I don't want to say you're a diamond in the rough, but you're probably, on the luckier side of some of the kids that were able to game. And you use the term addicted, for example.
Right.
So I think building those building blocks, those foundations early on, because kids game, again, whether it's at a small social level or they're highly competitive or anywhere in between, they game. So being able to provide that support and foundation is critical. What are your thoughts on that?
It's everything. I think it's how you look at it. I always tell everybody that wants to listen that it, at the very truest form of gaming, is a form of escapism at first. I don't think anyone ever steps into the gaming world and wants to compete and just like has the first dream of being like, I'm gonna go pro in this game. It's always with buddies at a LAN. I played at a LAN center for the first time, got my butt whooped in like Counter-Strike and wanted to like play from there. But it's like the small stepping stones and setting up a foundation as to who's around me, what are they doing? Is this just for me as a social level, or do I want to take it somewhere else? I mean, that comes down to a very personal level, right? If I didn't look at Counter-Strike and be like, I want to be great at this, how do I get better at it? I think my life takes a different route. And that's okay. But I tell people this all the time is figure out what you want to do with gaming very quickly, because there's a very big difference between just playing casually at a college level versus I want to go pro and how do I make that happen?
Yes.
And everywhere from the people around you that you're spending your time with to like when you're taking breaks to when you're getting off. I mean, it's just, you have to delegate time to think about what you want out of it. And, it's easier said than done when you're about, 14, 15, 16.
Sure. And I think that's where those building blocks and that parental support to enforce that reminder, if you will, hey, where are we headed with this?
10,000%. I can't even speak highly enough about the parents that want to get involved and have a conversation about what they can take out of it. I mean, I will be the first to tell you there are situations where it's not healthy. sitting down for 8 hours a day, if you really are playing that much, just like either a casual competitive setting and you're not taking care of your school, not taking care of your social, not taking care of family, whatever it is, that can be tough very quickly. And I completely understand. But I've seen the most success with parents that get really involved, have conversations to figure out how we can route this addiction, this passion, whatever you want to call it, into something that's going to later set them up for success. That's the key right there. That doesn't happen without the parent opening up to the idea of having a conversation, I think. We all have heard the stigma of get out of your parents' basement, the Dungeons and Dragon players, the video game players. But a lot of those Dungeons and Dragon players, the video game players, ended up being the nerds that run Google, the nerds that run all of these things, right? That like they were just doing this thing in their own time because they're very introverted and love to be in this space around other people that are like-minded. So once you take it and look into it, it's like, put it under a microscope and see what you can take out of it. I mean, the sky's the limit for your kid. I really believe that.
Yep. And I think it all falls on the shoulders of the parent to take that first step. Let me understand it.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. Fantastic info. Let's talk a little bit about New Haven. So on campus, I'm a freshman. I get on board. I want to be part of this. What's life like for me? What do I have to do? What's my day-to-day routine like? Socially, practice, everything. A to Z. Tell me as much as you can.
Right. So, day to day, it's a lot, classes throughout the day, have to prioritize that because end of the day, you are here to get an education. I'm always going to stress that. You can do both. I did both. It's possible. It's just a little bit difficult. Usually we're looking at a 2 to 3 hour block from Monday to Thursday, at least for my programs. I let Friday be more of a casual day because we are year round, where we are not regulated by NCAA. We do not have seasons. We can play whenever we want. So, we might have 3 seasons or whatever you want to call it. We might be competing in 3 leagues for 1 title throughout a year. And I don't want people to burn out. Even though I know a lot of the time those 3 hours is not enough for a really serious gamer, but we still want to set those time management blocks, right? And that's just, you're also being around other people that are like-minded in the competitive space. But when it comes to like the dedication of being part of a program, it's really just committing to the time factor and like listening to what I'm saying about becoming like a team player or working on your mechanical skill or going over leadership aspects. Like there's a lot to it and kind of rerouting how we view gaming. That's the biggest thing I think is like, even if I could just have 1 hour with individuals who are part of the program that want to reroute how they play and like what they're really doing with their time or how they respond to dying in a round or things of that nature, just being part of the community, on an academic or varsity level, and just dedicating, who you are as a person to bettering the program yourself, individuals around you, and, the college, the world, like that's the root of it, right? It's like, how can we just be better? Like, that's what I think grabs onto a lot of competitive people is how do you get better? So if you apply that into a very positive environment, I think that's everything for the program for me. That's everything. So.
Understood. Awesome. What are some of the titles you guys play?
So right now we're going to be competing in Counter-Strike, Valorant, Rocket League, League of Legends are the main 4 that are kind of popping up, where I want to be able to expand into other ones. Like R6 is a great game that's out. Smite's out there, but not as many people play it. There's tons of games out there, and that's the one thing that people don't really understand sometimes is that we say esports, but esports is comprised. There's about 20 esports titles around there competitively. And you kind of have to pick and choose which ones you want to do, but at the same time, you want to expand across some of these rosters. So those are the 4 we're looking at right now. But if I have 3 Apex Legend players pop up and message me and say, "Hey, I want to compete in Apex Legends and come to University of New Haven," we're gonna have an Apex Legends team. Like it's gonna be that simple. Because if you start coaching from the idea of like what we're talking about before is how do you become professional in the scene? How do you do leadership? How do you do team environment? It's less about the mechanics and the individual skill. It's more of just like getting that foundation and root set so that you can expand upon whatever roster you're trying to get into, I guess. Because I guarantee you, every kid at 17, 18 that wants to be pro in like Apex Legends is gonna take the time to get mechanically good at that game, without fail. I've done it myself. I see it all the time. That's never the problem. It's all the other aspects that are really difficult to learn by yourself. Truly.
Yeah, understood. Let's talk about the administrative side of things, meaning from a school location. Where is your esports program now in terms of administrative support? Is because it's different. It's obviously each school's at varying degrees. Some have started a long time ago, and man, they're up and running.
Right.
And some are just kind of getting into the scene because now it's growing all the way everywhere around them. Where are you guys?
We are getting into the scene. We are building the space right now. 24 brand new computers, 240 hertz monitors, the whole 9 yards, right? And that's for a 24 basically I don't like saying computer lab, but most people associate it with a computer lab, right? Like it's either arena, space, whatever you want to call it. That is our spot that's being built right now, and we'll be up and running fall 2020. So I'm recruiting for fall 2020 right now. Have about 18 people ready to go, looking for about 6 more.
There you go. There you go. So you'll have 24. Now, all varsity, or do you have club level as well?
We have club as well. And so I guess I really didn't answer the initial question is we have full support across the board, everywhere from rec to the club to, all the way all up to the top. This is like a direct order coming from the top saying we need esports because they see the vision of it. And that's what drew me here. I moved to University of New Haven in December, 2 days before Christmas. Crazy enough, because they really convinced me just how big their vision was for it. And I was all for it. We talk about the academic side. Very few, if any, colleges are really diving into the business side of esports right now and doing it effectively. So we talk about the varsity, but I'm working hand in hand with our professor here that is building up the esports academic program as well, because I think that's so important. And so we have full support across the board, and we're hoping to expand rapidly because I have huge visions for it too. I mean, always have, always will.
Awesome. Well, you're in a part of the country that can pull from a lot of different places. With your passion, I can only see success on the horizon, especially if you're getting.
I appreciate that.
Support. Obviously, that's critical for a number of organizations to grow. They need that administrative support. And it sounds like you've got it, and you're building in that curriculum, which is just a home run for the parents and students alike as well. So,
right,
Corey, we are going to be just about up on time. Man, we're going to have you back. There's so many more different directions I'd love to talk to you about a number of different things, especially even on the pro side of things, and obviously as you continue with your experience there. So let's definitely plan on getting back in touch. Love to get an update maybe in the fall. Hopefully we'll be a little bit back more towards normal.
Yeah.
To go from there. But we at Stay Plugged In, we love hearing stories like yours, seeing people that have a vision and passion as you do. As a parent, you're the type of person that I would say, hey, yeah, my son or daughter is going to be in pretty good hands going over there. So we appreciate
I appreciate that. It's a big statement, and that's the biggest thing, if I had to touch on one thing is like, this is just as much conversation with the student as it is with the parents. I actually, in my first couple of years, while esports is kind of evolving to get onto the campuses of all the campuses on the nation, it's really me talking to parents and helping them understand that, no, we're not just going down there to just waste 6 hours of time. We're not going down there to just waste 3 hours of time. Like there is a structure to this. You just have to make sure that the right person's behind it. And if that's me, hopefully. If not, find someone who is.
Yeah, no doubt. Fantastic. Well, again, we appreciate your time. Stay safe. And hopefully everyone got bits and pieces that they can take home with them from this Spincast. So we do appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'll be back anytime you want.